Hi, and welcome to the Harrison Public Library, and thank you for joining me on a virtual tour of some of downtown Harrison's historic and socially significant buildings. My name's Gene Westmoreland, a library volunteer, amateur historian, and a member of the famous Harrison High School class of '61. Founded in 1696, the downtown portion of Harrison remained quite rural for more than a century until the railroad. The first tracks came through Harrison in 1848. Those early trains did not make regular stops in Harrison. They had to be waved down. In order to make scheduled stops and build a station house, the railroad required overnight accommodations, which led to the Mansion House and later the Harrison Hotel. Harrison's first station house was built at track level in the late 1800s and was located along the New York City-bound tracks. As rail traffic increased, making a daily commute to New York City practical, a parking lot was added along Halsted Avenue to the east of the tracks. In 1912, a third line was added to the New York, New Haven, and Hartford lines to accommodate the new and upscale New York, Westchester, and Boston Railroad. The construction of that third line required moving the station house up to Hillside Avenue, it's now called Heineman Place. That large red stone station house remained in use for many decades and remains today a reminder of days gone by. The New York, Westchester, and Boston Railroad failed during the Depression, and those tracks were removed to accommodate parking for the robust number of daily commuters to New York City. More than any single event, the railroad changed the nature of Harrison, creating a sensational suburban village, middle-class population with an easy commute to the big city, a first-class school system, and public recreation. Through the 1800s, most of Harrison's structures were built of wood, making fires a major fear and a community challenge. By the mid-1800s, Harrison had a few fire companies who competed for business on a first-come-gets-the-business basis. But when the Harrison Town Council voted for downtown Harrison's first fire department around 1900, its home was on Fremont Street, near the intersection with Harrison Avenue. It was a volunteer fire department with 100-plus volunteer firemen who came from every walk of life, laborers, merchants, and the well-to-do. The firehouse was a two-story building with a large meeting room on the second floor. Because of their volunteer neighbor-to-neighbor nature, that meeting room served as a social center for Harrison and hosted dances, holiday celebrations, and meetings. That pre-1900 firehouse meeting room also housed a book loaning and sharing service, early Episcopalian church services, and for a few years served as a public elementary schoolhouse, accommodating almost 100 children. New equipment, taking us from the horse-pulled to power engines, were continually introduced, and the building served the community until 1921, when tragedy struck. Fire. Yes, the firehouse burned to the ground. By 1923, a new building was in place on the same Harrison Avenue Fremont corner, but this time facing Harrison Avenue. As in the past, a second-floor meeting room with a stage was included and used for community activities. I remember attending a Cub Scout Blue and Gold Awards dinner. The building has been expanded and updated a couple of times. Today we have approximately 15 paid firemen and a volunteer team of 75. By 1890, Harrison's population had grown to about 1,500, and some of our predecessors, dissatisfied with the lack of religious organizations in the community, began discussing and planning. A lot would happen during the next decade. On a Friday evening in 1891, 35 Harrison residents met in the parlor of the Mansion House, a public inn on the corner of Halsted Avenue and Purdy Street. As a result of that meeting, the Rye Presbyterian Church became interested and decided to help the Harrison people establish a chapel in Harrison. The Hope Chapel was founded in March 1892 and opened its doors that August. Early services were conducted by visiting ministers, and the Presbyterian Church of Harrison was formally established in 1900 and for 125 years has remained on its original site, the intersection of Harrison and Park Avenue. The church bell was donated by the Halstead family in memory of their daughter. The church suffered a disastrous fire in May 1922, and on June 22nd, the congregation voted to build a new church on the same ground. Their new church was rededicated on Easter Sunday, April 12, 1925. Their historic and cherished bell had survived the fire and was reinstalled in the new church belfry, where it rings proudly today. In January 1898, a group of 19 Episcopalians began meeting for worship at the Fremont Street Firehouse. Services were so well attended that it was decided by April to organize a Sunday school and erect the church building. Little time was wasted. Mrs. J.K. Purdy and her brother, Gabriel Berger, donated land on Harrison Avenue. Among the early benefactors were Mr. and Mrs. William H. Macy, Jr., who gave generously to build the altar, the rear of the church, and the sensational stained glass windows, a major attraction designed and installed by the Lamb brothers of New York City and Henry Wynd Young. The church opened on All Saints' Day, November 1st, 1898. The Mission Church gained parish status in 1906, and Reverend George McNaught stayed as rector until 1935. McNaught recalls that when he started, that there were only 2 automobiles in Harrison, dirt roads and no streetlights. Parishioners came to evening services on foot, carrying lanterns, which were left in the vestibule of the church. The Church of St. Gregory the Great was dedicated December 21, 1902. The church was built on a plot of land on Halston Avenue at Featherbend Lane, renamed Summer Street, then renamed again to Broadway. On June 6, 1915, a fire broke out in the middle of the night. Valiant work by a volunteer fire department saved much of the structure, and swift but makeshift temporary repairs were made and services continued. However, the ceiling was badly scarred and covered by strips of burlap. When Father William Prunty became St. Gregory's 4th pastor in 1918, he set out to renovate and restore the church, and in 7 short months, it was completely restored. Its interior was a perfect replica of a 15th century European country church and the subject of much praise. It is said that people came from far and near to admire its simple loveliness. Even more touching was that the exterior stone had been obtained from Harrison's neighborhood quarries. By rights, their future should have been smooth sailing, and it was, for 14 years. But in 1932, Westchester County officials decided that Halsted Avenue would have to be widened. The church was in the way and would have to be taken down. The charming replica of 15th century Europe was raised on July 2nd, 1934. Construction for a new church began immediately, with plans for an upper and lower church of Romanesque architecture. The lower church was completed in May 1935. For those 11 months of construction, services were conducted across the street at the American Legion Hall. The Great Depression was raging, and finances were, of course, a factor. So a decision was made to defer work on the upper church to the day when funds became available. It was not until 1961 that the upper church became a reality. There have been 3 post offices and 3 village halls in downtown Harrison. The first post office was simply a nook in a grocery store on the corner of Halsted and Harrison Avenues. When the iconic Chase Bank is built in 1928, The post office is moved about 200 feet southeast down Harrison Avenue, opposite a Sterling building and alongside the new Biltmore movie theater. The post office remained there until 1939, when the current post office was built. Our original Village Hall offices were located a few storefronts north of the first post office on Halsted Avenue, occupying the second floor of 285 Halsted Avenue. That stone-faced building is now occupied by Bell Cleaners. In 1914, Town Hall was moved into the new Sterling building, and along with the Harrison Police Department, would remain there from 1914 to 1977. Since 1977, town-village business has been conducted at the Alfred F. Sula Municipal Building on Heineman Place. Mr. Harrison Sula was Harrison superintendent from 1946 to 1955 and 1958 to 1965. He was a charismatic advocate for all things Harrison, in town, across Westchester County, and at our state capitol in Albany. The Parsons Memorial School, dating back to 1898, may be the oldest public building still in use in Harrison. While a few isolated one-room schoolhouses might have been found in the late 1800s, the first public school funded by the town was launched on September 5, 1896, when the Union Free School District No. 6 of Harrison and Rye leased the community room, that second floor of the firehouse, for $800 to serve as their classroom. In the second year, 1897, the student body had risen to 99, using charcoal and white sheets as a creative makeshift blackboard. Before long, the Harrison Board of Trustees took action to acquire close to 5 acres on Halsted Avenue at Summer Street, today's Broadway, as a school site. A tax of $5,500 had been approved and covered the cost of the property. To the rescue comes John E. Parsons, a successful lawyer and resident of New York City and Rye. Parsons' Rye Estate, Lounsbury Farm, is still located on Boston Post Road, adjacent to the Rye Golf Club. At the October 15th board meeting, knowing a schoolhouse is on the agenda, Mr. Parsons attends and offers to put upon this land a building composed of stone and brick or of stone. Keep in mind the great threat of fire to wooden buildings. And he says further, and offers to provide $30,000 towards the erection of a schoolhouse. 125 years later, that $30,000 donation might be worth $1 million or more. Ground was broken for a magnificent stone schoolhouse in June 1897. Obviously, John Parsons was quite a guy. Not only did he provide the footing for the Harrison school system, he was a founder and first president of the New York Cancer Center, today's Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. He was also a longtime president of the tuition-free New York City College, the Cooper Union School, and on the board for the new Museum of Natural History in New York City. The new Parsons School had 3 classrooms: the principal's classroom with desks for 36, an intermediate classroom had 35, and 49 could be accommodated in the primary room. On the second floor was an assembly room for examinations and lectures with a seating capacity of 100. If needed, the assembly room could be partitioned into 2 classrooms, making 5 classrooms with a total of 220. Free public school was a Harrison reality, and a great deal of fanfare took place. On June 5, 1897, a parade of students, the fire department, and the Parsons family had marched from the firehouse up Harrison Avenue, then, accompanied by one of New York's famous marching bands, made their way up Halsted Avenue to the school site to break ground. 8 short months later, on Lincoln's birthday, February 12, 1898, a standing room only crowd of students, parents, local and state officials packed the assembly room when the school was dedicated. Classes began at Parsons in September 1898. In 1899, Parsons was admitted into the New York Regents Department as a junior school. Population continued to climb, and in 1901, classes are added for a one-year high school course. On opening day 1898, the number of students exceeded 100, and before long, the space for 220 was crowded, calling for an expansion in 1908. The new wing offered 16 new classrooms on 2 floors, along with a modern administrative office space. A third floor housed an auditorium, which could seat the entire student body. Harrison continued to grow, and by 1912, a child could go to kindergarten through high school at Parsons. By 1920, there were 88 high school grade students. By 1927, the third floor auditorium was divided by curtains for additional classroom space, which inevitably led to the 1928 expansion with a cafeteria, gymnasium, and approximately 18 new classrooms. By the late 1930s, Parsons was housing between 600 and 700 students, K through 12, and bursting at the seams. In September 1940, a new and separate high school is built on Union Avenue, today's LMK Middle School, to accommodate grades 8 through 12. By the turn of the century, that is 1900, downtown Harrison was flourishing. The railroad lines were busier than ever. Harrison was a regular stop on the lines, making daily work commutes to New York City practical. The Mansion House provided overnight accommodations for long-distance travelers, and a huge housing development, Franklin Park, was already accommodating hundreds of middle-class families with private homes. Large tracts of land, formerly farmland, were quickly being sold between downtown and the Hutchinson River, providing spectacular settings for grand estates and weekend getaways for some of New York's wealthy. On top of that, the town has recently opened a much-envied state-of-the-art public school. Within a decade, would be providing K through 12 free education. Physical fitness was a new rage, and the town was ripe for a private health club, and a beauty was provided. Now among the missing was one of my favorite Harrison landmarks, the Frank Sollazzo Recreation Center. The building was opened in 1905 as a private health club, think NYAC, New York Athletic Club. It was called the Aranac. Some trace the name back to a Middle Eastern word meaning to take action. Others, given Harrison's American native beginnings and affection, believe the building was named after Native American Chief Aranac. Take your pick. Membership dues included use of a billiard room, bowling lanes, exercise classes, and a state-of-the-art exercise equipment. An outdoor second-floor terrace was an ideal spot to enjoy an adult beverage along with fellow members. Bowling had found its niche in Westchester. Upscale new clubs like Scarsdale Golf Club, Pelham Country Club, and Waikago Country Club, all opened in 1898, were all providing bowling lanes, so it was no surprise that in 1905, the Aranac offered it too, along with another new American sport, basketball. Having just left the peach basket era, and with no standards as to court dimensions, the court was considered small by today's standards. But not in 1905, when it was considered one of the best, hosting the Eastern Basketball Championship from 1914 to 1920. I can attest to the fact that the magnificently maintained maple floorboards were of the highest quality. Within a couple of years of its opening, a second-floor stage was added to the south end of the basketball court, so the club could conduct community theater, concerts, and lectures. The Depression took its toll, and in the mid-1920s, the building was gifted to the village and became our first recreation center. Following World War II, Frank Sollazzo became the director, something of a Pied Piper, and a real-life role model, he guided, trained, and encouraged decades of athletes. The building was named in his honor following his premature death in 1966. Kids in the 80s and 90s simply referred to the building as the Rec. A new building to carry Big Frank's name is under construction. American patriotism was strong in 1918 as the world celebrated the end of what was sure to be the war to end all wars. And many communities erected war memorials. Harrison's Doughboy still stands proudly and ready for action on Harrison Avenue across Heineman Place from our municipal building. Funds were quickly raised to begin construction on the American Legion building across Halsted Avenue from St. Gregory the Great. Almost 300 Harrison men saw action, and 18 paid the ultimate price during World War I. The Carl Anderson American Legion Post number 559 was named in honor of the first two KIAs, that's killed in action, Clarence Carl and Robert Anderson. Within a few years, the VFW, that's Veterans of Foreign Wars, Post 3047, was added and named in honor of another Harrison KIA, Curtis Seaman Reed. While a fundraising campaign quickly covered the initial construction costs, a mortgage was necessary to complete the building for its grand opening in 1921. The building featured a stage on the west end, balcony on the east, and hosted veterans events and monthly meetings, along with patriotic celebrations every Memorial Day, 4th of July, November 11th, Armistice Day, now referred to as Veterans Day. The mortgage and the Great Depression took its toll, and the American Legion Hall was sold to the town of Harrison in the early 1930s. From that day forward, the building has been used for community service, Boy Scouts Awards Dinner, dance contests, Harrison Players theater shows, bingo games, senior programs, and bake sales. But all these events remain secondary to the veterans' use of the building. For years, the building housed an outstanding drum and bugle corps, and the Post sponsored a Harrison team in the American Legion Baseball, raised money for scholarships, and funded kids' summers at Boys State. During World War II, the building was used for blood drives. 216 Halsted, the cute cottage that stands next to the Legion building, was gifted to Harrison by Mrs. Josephine Macy Chamberlain Barron, the same lady who donated land for the Episcopal Church and gifted Harrison with the Recreation Center. Quite a lady. In its early years, it housed the Visiting Nurses Association, as she was a big advocate for public health service. The visiting nurse service lasted into the 50s. At one point, the now attached cottage provided CPR lessons and loaned wheelchairs and walkers. In later years, it housed a Harrison PD youth officer. In its early years, the old-timers were Spanish-American war vets. Membership and attendance at American Legion VFW meetings and events peaked following World War II and the Korean War. Attendance is lighter today, although a Memorial Day ceremony and parade still bring attention to thank and honor those who served. Movie theaters. I did not misspeak. There have been 2 movie theaters in downtown Harrison. The first was located on Halsted Avenue, directly across from today's post office, and may have served several purposes. On nights that no movie was scheduled, it may have been a gathering place for card games, and there was speculation that a careless smoker may have been the cause for a fire that ended its existence in 1921. The Biltmore Theater was opened to some fanfare in 1924 and was very popular, especially with the younger crowd, well into the 1960s. Families might have headed to White Plains or New Rochelle for the 4-star Academy Award level movies, while the Biltmore, some called it Six-Gun Playhouse, regularly featured low-budget movies, westerns with singing cowboys like Roy Rogers and Gene Autry, film noir, coming attractions, newsreels, cartoons, serials like Buck Rogers, and thrillers like The Creature of the Black Lagoon. A couple attempts were made to revive the old theater. Rebranded the Harrison Cinema in 1980, was to include both movies and live theater, but it never took hold. The theater has been closed for many years. The marquee remained into the 2020s, but even that was removed a couple years ago, having left lasting, fond memories to decades of Harrison kids. Not nearly as popular as they once were, scouting was once big in Harrison, and scout houses were prominent spots in Harrison. Funding to build the Boy Scout house came from the Harrison Lions Club and was built following World War II. Downtown Harrison had two troops. One had their weekly meetings at the Presbyterian Church, and the other at the Harrison Avenue School. The log cabin-style scout house was located on Calvert Street on the northeastern corner with Broadway, and was occasionally used to accommodate combined meetings of the two troops and to create and practice some scouting skills. The building was razed several years ago, and the land now serves as a parking lot for 83 Calvert Street. The Girl Scout house, which still stands on the corner of Crotona and Bradford, was originally an aircraft parts factory. The town purchased the building in 1930 and has served as the Girl Scout house ever since. As the number of scouts began to shrink, the town started using much of the space to accept and distribute donations of food and clothing. That mission continues today. Those who lived in Harrison in the 50s and 60s, along with golf fans around the world, were familiar with the famous West Course at Westchester Country Club. In 1963, the PGA Tour's Thunderbird Classic moved from Upper Montclair Country Club in New Jersey to Westchester Country Club. The name would be changed to the Westchester Classic, and within a couple of years, become a popular PGA Tour stop that lasted for 50 years. Not only were the courses at Westchester looked upon with envy, its variety of sporting facilities set it apart from clubs around the world. To start with, the club featured two championship courses, the West and the South, along with a 9-hole par 3 course, a beach club on Nursing Island, 20 tennis courts, both clay and grass, 3 polo fields, a bridle path, a horse track, indoor swimming pool, and a boxing ring. All that in addition to a luxurious Biltmore hotel. While the bridle paths, polo fields, boxing ring, and Biltmore connection are gone, the club remains a singular sensation and Harrison landmark, but only one of 6 private clubs in Harrison. Old Oaks and Century Country Clubs moved into the purchase area in the 1920s, Brayburn in the 60s, and the Golf Club of Purchase in 1996, giving Harrison more golf courses than any municipality in Westchester. The granddaddy of them all, Harrison Meadows. Founded in 1917 and now a major Harrison asset, it was formerly Willow Ridge Country Club. By 1890, the railroad station, the Harrison Market, which included Village Hall and the post office, and the Mansion Hotel created what would forever be Harrison's center of activity. Surely no single building changed our look more than the bank on the corner of Halsted and Harrison Avenue. Opened in 1928, the bank has operated under several names: Chase Manhattan, National Bank of Westchester, Harrison's First National Bank, Rye National Bank, and Bowery Savings Bank. I can only guess the reaction the bank had to Harrison residents in the 1920s, but it stood the test of time. The new 2020s look, overdue perhaps, different and controversial for sure. Check back in 2120. Thank you. This video was produced by Dan Bream and the Harrison Public Library. I hope our paths cross soon.